Imagine a country, one of the oldest civilizations on the planet, an empire that once ruled over 40% of the world's population, the birthplace of the first human rights declaration in history, and in the early 1950s, a real, functioning democracy, free elections, a free press, a prime minister the people actually chose, a man the Iranian people genuinely loved. Then, in the summer of 1953, over the course of just 4 days, the United States government destroyed it all. Not with an army, not with bombs, with suitcases full of cash. This is the true story of Operation Ajax, the CIA's first coup, and the decision that created the Middle East we know today. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand something most people never learn in school. To understand what happened in 1953, we need to go back, much further back. Around 550 BC, a king named Cyrus the Great united the Persian tribes and built what would become the largest empire the ancient world had ever seen. At its peak, the Persian Empire covered over 5 million square kilometers. It stretched from Egypt and Greece in the west, all the way to the borders of India in the east. But what made Cyrus different wasn't just military power, it was how he ruled. In 539 BC, after conquering Babylon, Cyrus issued a decree carved into a clay cylinder. It allowed conquered peoples to return to their homelands. It guaranteed freedom of religion. It banned slavery. Today, a replica of that cylinder sits inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, recognized as one of the earliest human rights documents in history. After Cyrus, empire followed empire. The Achaemenids, the Parthians, the Sassanids, each one leaving a mark on world history. Persian culture was extraordinary. Poetry, mathematics, medicine, architecture. Iran was a center of global civilization when most of Europe was still living in the Dark Ages. Then came the 20th century, and with it, something new. Something that would attract the most powerful nations on Earth to this ancient land: oil. In 1908, British engineers drilling in southwestern Iran struck one of the largest oil deposits ever found. The modern Middle East was about to be born, and Iran's fate was about to be sealed. The company that would control Iranian oil was called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. You might know it today by a different name, British Petroleum, BP. The deal was simple on paper. Britain drills the oil, Iran gets a share of the profits. But in practice, Iran got almost nothing. Iranian workers labored in the oil fields under brutal conditions. They lived in shacks near refineries worth hundreds of millions of pounds. Meanwhile, the British executives lived like kings. By 1951, Iranians had had enough. They took to the streets, they demanded change, and they found their champion, Mohammad Mossadegh, a 69-year-old lawyer and politician who had spent decades fighting for Iranian independence. He was a strange political figure, educated in Europe, emotional. Sometimes he wept in public. He wore pajamas to political meetings, but the people loved him because he said what everyone was thinking. In April 1951, the Iranian parliament voted unanimously to nationalize the oil industry. Every drop of oil in Iran would now belong to the Iranian people. The reaction in Iran was euphoric. This was their moment, their oil, their future. In London, the reaction was very different. Britain called Mossadegh a thief, a communist. They threatened him. When that didn't work, they organized an international oil embargo. Tankers were turned away from Iranian ports. The Iranian economy began to collapse. But Mossadegh refused to back down. So, Britain made a phone call to Washington. At first, the Americans said no. President Truman actually respected Mossadegh. He believed Iran had the right to control its own resources. His Secretary of State even called Britain's behavior old-fashioned imperialism. But in January 1953, a new president took office, Dwight Eisenhower. World War II hero, Cold Warrior, and a man who believed the Soviet threat was everywhere. The British came to Eisenhower with a new argument, a terrifying one given the times. Mossadegh is a communist. If he stays in power, Iran will fall to the Soviets. The communists will control the oil, and the Cold War will be over because we will have lost. It was almost certainly a lie. Every piece of evidence showed Mossadegh was a nationalist Democrat, not a communist. He actually opposed the Soviet Union, but the argument worked. Eisenhower gave the CIA its orders: remove Mossadegh, restore the Shah, secure the oil. The operation was given a code name, Operation Ajax. The man chosen to lead it was Kermit Roosevelt Jr., a 37-year-old CIA officer and the grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt. In July 1953, Roosevelt drove across the border from Iraq into Iran, hidden under a blanket in the back seat of a car. He arrived in Tehran with a mission and a budget of over $1 million in cash. The plan was simple and ruthless. Step 1. Bribe the Iranian military. Get the generals on your side. Step 2. Pay newspaper editors to print lies about Mossadegh, fake stories, fake scandals. Make the public lose faith in Mossadegh. Step 3. Hire gangs from the slums of Tehran. Pay them to riot, but tell them to pretend they're Mossadegh supporters. Have them attack mosques, attack religious leaders. Make it look like Mossadegh was an enemy of Islam. Turn the people against their own leader. In modern terms, we'd call it a disinformation campaign. The CIA invented the template in Tehran in 1953. On August 13th, the Shah signed the papers. Mossadegh was dismissed as prime minister. General Zaidi, a man who had collaborated with the Nazis in World War II, was appointed to replace him. Mossadegh read the order and refused to leave. His supporters poured into the streets by the tens of thousands. The coup was exposed. The Shah panicked. He fled Iran, first to Baghdad, then to Rome, photographed at a hotel looking lost and defeated. Back in Washington, the CIA sent Roosevelt an emergency cable. The operation has failed. Stand down. Do not proceed. Roosevelt read the cable and ignored it. He had 1 week's worth of cash left and one more plan. He reached out to every military commander he had bribed, every mob leader. He told them, the time is now, tomorrow or never. August 19th, 1953. At dawn, paid mobs began gathering in South Tehran. They marched through the streets, chanting, but they weren't Mossadegh's real supporters. They were actors, paid for by the CIA. By mid-morning, military units loyal to the Shah began to move. Tanks rolled towards the center of the city. Pro-Mossadegh and anti-Mossadegh forces clashed in the streets. Gunfire, chaos, bodies falling. By the end of the day, approximately 300 people had died in the fighting. By late afternoon, Mossadegh's home was surrounded. He climbed over the back wall in his pajamas. He was captured the next morning. He was put on trial, sentenced to 3 years in prison, then house arrest for life. He spent the last 14 years of his life confined to a single house. He died in 1967. He never held office again. He never spoke freely again. The Shah returned to Iran, triumphant, and as a thank you to the Americans who put him back on his throne, he signed over 40% of Iran's oil fields to US companies. Britain got its oil, America got its strategic ally, and Iran got a dictator. The Shah ruled Iran for the next 26 years, and he ruled through fear. His secret police, Savak, was built, trained, and equipped with CIA assistance. Thousands of Iranians were arrested, tortured, disappeared. But you cannot suppress an entire nation forever. In 1979, Iran exploded. The Islamic Revolution. The Shah was overthrown. Ayatollah Khomeini came to power. When the US allowed the Shah to enter America for medical treatment, Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran. Why? because they remembered 1953. They knew what the CIA could do from inside an embassy. 52 American diplomats were held hostage for 444 days, and the chain of events that followed has never stopped. The Iran-Iraq War, the sanctions, the nuclear standoff, the proxy conflicts across the Middle East, decades of tension, decades of mistrust, millions of lives affected. It all traces back to one moment, one decision, one man with a suitcase of cash that got off a plane in Tehran in 1953. Because a democratically elected leader said 3 words that the wrong people didn't want to hear. This is ours. In 2013, 60 years after the coup, the CIA finally, officially admitted what it had done.
The first time in history, the agency publicly acknowledged engineering the fall of a democracy. Mossadegh never got an apology. Iran never got its democracy back. But now, you know. If this video changed how you see the world, subscribe, because next week we go deeper. The 1979 revolution, the hostage crisis, and how everything you just learned connects to the Iran of today. See you then.